It is now time for member statements, and I recognize the member for Oshawa.
Thank you, Speaker. Businesses in Oshawa, Durham Region and across Ontario are very concerned about the devastating impact of COVID-19. They're trying to survive and make it through to the other side. I've been hearing from businesses, downtown BIAs, the Chambers of Commerce and Boards of Trade. The Ontario NDP submitted the Save Main Street plan, filled with recommendations based on what small and medium businesses have been asking for. They need tools like the successful Digital Mainstreet program so that business can get online and get to their customers and community. Enhance wage subsidies because the Fed's 10% isn't going to cut it. We need to institute a utility payment freeze, postpone tourism and marketing fees in the hospitality sector, and dedicate resources to ensure the food supply chain has what it needs, and invest in the tools and resources that entrepreneurs need for the future. Commercial landlords are still not taking advantage of the federal money, so the Premier should pick up the phone and use Ontario's influence with the feds. Small and medium businesses are desperate to open but worried at the same time. So support them with help and ensure that there are clear guidelines. How will they get PPE? What happens if they need support? They want to know that there's some security if they need it. Small, Main Street and medium businesses have always been the backbone of our communities, especially now in the face of such uncertainty. We have to listen to them and support them. Reshaping the future is a big job, Speaker, that will take all of us, and this government needs to put its money where its mouth is. We have to invest in and ensure the future of small businesses, not just hope it happens. The business community, they've been very vocal, very active. I have written a letter on behalf of Main Street businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, and they're still looking for support and resources, if it's as specific as helping them to transition to a digital and online platform with Digital Mainstreet and bringing that program back, whether it's talking about banning evictions or commercial rent relief, all of these things. It can't just be the tax deferral down the road. We need help now. They need help now. You know, we can all point to a favourite business that may not be there at the end of this, whether we already know that to be true or we are worried that that will be the case. But those workplaces need to be kept safe. The workers need to be kept safe, the customers, the establishment. And I'll tell you, the other day I went into a local store, and it was one of I do my best to, you know, make it only be as needed. But I was in there and I was impressed by the protocols and the measures that had been taken by that local business, with the plexiglass and the dots on the floor, and how you came in and where there was hand sanitizer and things were labeled, and everybody knew the rules except the guy behind me and his daughter. They didn't know the rules and they didn't care. And not only did they not know the rules and didn't care, when it was pointed out politely by the sales clerk, they weren't happy about that, but they looked around and read the room and realized there were a bunch of other folks that were not impressed that they were not on their dot. Right? So it's a strange time, and I know that the businesses have communicated they want clear guidelines because they don't want to do something the wrong way and end up not just in trouble but endangering someone. They want to be able to work with this government, so make sure that they have those opportunities. When the member from Timiskaming Cochrane mentioned that the hotline, that the businesses in his community and the tourism industry were referred to the hotline, and then the hotline turns out to be giving different information than my colleague is hearing from the ministers. That puts people in the risk of maybe getting in trouble, doing the wrong thing, potentially endangering the public, but that is not how we move forward with kind of a mishmash or hodgepodge or chaos. Let's do things thoughtfully and take that feedback. When you hear that a hotline isn't working, make sure it does. And there are so many examples of that, so do your best, please.
The member for Oshawa.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I am pleased to have my opportunity to speak on Government Bill 204, Helping Tenants and Small Businesses Act. And it's always a privilege, I know, for all members of this House to stand and bring the voices of their communities, of their businesses, of their families. And so here I stand, and I want to revisit some of the voices that I actually have shared in this House before, because this is an opportunity for us again to drive home to this government that there are folks being left out of this so-called plan, that many of our small businesses are still asking for the same support that they have been asking for at the beginning of this pandemic. They would like as much clear direction and clear understanding of a plan, just as they did at the beginning. I know that things have evolved, but they're still asking for that direct support. And as we've heard here today, a number of us had the opportunity to hear from folks at committee, to sit at committee, or, Madam Speaker, sit in a room by ourselves in an empty committee room with folks on screen. But from across the province, we heard that whether rural, whether northern, whether downtown Oshawa, that businesses are asking for help. They want to follow the rules. They want to implement and observe these protocols. They want to do well. They want some kind of certainty in a world that is so uncertain right now. They want to be able to stay open if they have been able to survive to this point, Madam Speaker. Whether we heard from businesses about the need for broadband, whether we heard from businesses about the need for programs like Digital Mainstreet that allows businesses to pivot to the online world, which we have seen has been the lifeline for so many small businesses, that those businesses that were able to avail themselves of that program, of the Digital Mainstreet program, that has been what has allowed them to get their goods to market, to connect with people across their community. So we had all called on this government to extend that. I understand that had happened, which was good that they listened to the business community on that point. I do understand, though, that money, that there's still a cap. So I would challenge the government to ensure that programs like that we are hearing from business are working, that they not run out, that they continue to invest in the business in that regard. But these are businesses that need direct support. That's not in this bill. You know, we've got letters that we've been reading to you in this House, but I'm sure your offices are already aware, from business owners who are asking for that help. They want to be able to keep their doors open. Any businesses, Madam Speaker, that I have had the opportunity to see up close, you know, in this kind of the last chapter that we have all been going through, as maybe we've been back out in our community in different ways, the businesses are so eager to do right by their neighbours and customers, right? They want to be able to continue to not only exist but one day thrive. And if we have to shut everything down again, they won't survive. I've got a letter here from Susan Goldie. She said, small businesses in Oshawa are in desperate need of government support. The physical distancing requirements to protect the public from COVID-19 have had a devastating impact on small businesses. While small businesses were quick to close to help save lives, the government has been slow to provide basic support to ensure they are able to reopen. As your constituent, I am seeking your support to protect small business. Without your help, many will be unable to survive. The single greatest challenge facing small business owners is rent. If rent protections are not put in place, thousands of businesses will be forced to close. The economic impact of choosing not to support small businesses will be disastrous for both our local and national economy. Any plan to reopen must include rent support. Without it, most small businesses will be unable to do so successfully. With less than 20% of landlords expected to participate in CCRA, the province has to step in to ensure that small businesses, the heart and soul of our community, are protected. There is little time to act. Show that you care about small business before it's too late. And that's from Susan Goldie. But we all got letters like this, like almost verbatim. Please help. And that help is not here.
You share some of the story. Would it make a difference to your constituents, to the small business in Oshawa, if there was an eviction freeze so that they would have some certainty in their business that they will be able to continue to be there? Will that make a difference to the people you represent and the businesses you represent?
Member for Oshawa.
Thank you for the question, and I'm going to combine those two answers because the businesses are the families in my community, and the families are the businesses and the customers. Like, we are community, all of us, right? We represent communities. So they're being able to depend on money coming in, and to make plans would make an unbelievable difference. It means that a business could figure out if there is money to invest of their own, if what they say to the banks, you know, what they can depend on from the province, like all of this allows them to make plans. The same thing is true for someone who is constantly worried that they're going to lose their place of their home, right? If there was an actual rent subsidy, you know, if there was a utility freeze, if there was these are things that, with that comes certainty. And we're all surrounded by so much uncertainty. That is what is needed. This government needs to be clear and provide certainty.
Question, the member for Etobicoke Lakeshore.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you very much for your speech today and joining in on debate. And you know, our government, we wanted to ensure that businesses had the support they needed to recover from this unprecedented situation. And I know the member opposite mentioned that we didn't give anything. So we actually have committed $241 million to deliver the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program for small businesses in partnership with the federal government. So don't forget about that $241 million that have been invested. But you know, this is the second time our government is bringing forward legislation to put in place a moratorium on commercial evictions for businesses eligible for CECRA. So I guess my question for the member opposite is, you know, we want to ensure that small businesses impacted by COVID aren't forced from their livelihoods. You know, I hear about this in my riding all the time. From the Queensway to the Kingsway, they just want to continue with their businesses. So why is the opposition opposed to these measures each time?
Thank you. The member for Oshawa.
Thank you. And as if. Clearly, the opposition supports things that work. When we hear from the same businesses that they purport to hear from that something is working, we are grateful, and we've said that. And I said that in my speech. We will support things that make a difference for community members and businesses. When it falls short, then we want better. And we deserve, as communities, as businesses, we deserve better. So, you know, I already said that I will give them the sticker for the things that they do well that businesses and community members have asked for. But what about all of the other pieces? So, you know, the Save Main Street plan is being supported by Chambers of Commerce, and the CFIB and other folks have said that there are pieces in that plan that they want to see. I'll lob it right back. Why won't they support what is being supported by the business community? You know, they who are open for business, are you available and listening to business? There's my question.
The member for Oshawa.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad to have the opportunity again to ask the Associate Minister for Small Business and Red Tape Reduction about something that he did mention in his remarks about the Ontario Small Business Support Grants. This is something that certainly was appreciated upon its announcement. Many small businesses have applied and been successful in their application. However, Speaker, been successful in their application, but not successful in getting the funds. And we're hearing this across communities. The government has acknowledged that they're hearing it as well. I wrote a letter to various ministers asking when these small businesses across communities who are so desperately waiting for those funds that have been promised. They've been begging for direct aid. They've been told it's coming. That was mid-January. We're now mid-April, and they haven't gotten their money. I want to know when the money to honour the government promises is going to flow. And businesses who have questions that can't get a call back, can't get the courtesy of a response, what are they to do? When is the money coming? Thank you.
Associate Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank the member opposite for that question. Our government has been able to process over 100,000 applications and pay out over 100,000 applications. Over $1.5 billion has already flowed to small businesses, but we recognize and understand that there are some businesses that are still waiting for that payment, and we have tripled our support staff on the back end to ensure that those processes, to ensure that those payments are made, and that they can get the support they need and that they can get the responses they need. In some circumstances, there might be some clarification that is needed, but 100,000 plus businesses have received the funding of over $1.5 billion, and they will also get an automatic renewal, automatic payment of another $1.5 or $1.7 billion into their accounts without having to reapply to the program. So it's a $3.4 billion investment to support.
Speaker, I've spoken a lot about Ontario small business grants and the different businesses that have applied and 3 months later still have not gotten their funding. People who have two businesses and are told to pick one, which would tell me they're both eligible, but pick a favorite. How is that helping? We have folks who are asking to be considered eligible when they were left out the last time. I heard from a residential contractor who was never eligible, who makes a very strong case because he has a business in the community and is in need of help and has not had enough to get by. And Speaker, fun fact, and I shouldn't be flip. So I've heard from Candy, who owns Hair Candy. I've talked about her in the legislature. She applied for the OSBSG, was successful in her application, still has yet to see the money, but today or yesterday, thank you for submitting your application for this Ontario Small Business Support Grant. And you have received an OSBSG payment, which is false. So the province of Ontario is currently in the process of a post-payment audit. So she gets a call for an audit. She doesn't have the money. Do better. Thank you. We also keep hearing over and over that one of the ways that this government has not intentionally failed, but is supporting small business. And I say not intentionally failed because the program for the Ontario Small Business Support Grants, everyone in this room was grateful to hear that many of their small businesses were applying for and being accepted, and that they were being promised money. And I feel like every single MPP in this House, I think it's all parties, because we have been talking about it, have businesses that have yet to receive their first payment or have some sort of weird, complicating issue that should have been resolved how many months later. So we've had the minister, we've had the associate minister, we've had folks explain that they've hired more people to deal with it. And I will tell you, honestly, that when I checked in with my staff to find out before this debate if all of those same businesses that had reached out to us, a month or two ago and hadn't received their money, had any of them gotten their payments? Were they all still in limbo? Some are still in limbo. Some have received their money. Some have gotten both payments at once. And some are relieved that they're getting a call back when they hadn't been. So it had been silence for weeks. So there's still a mix, but more and more of the businesses in my community are at least able to reach a real live human, or my office is able to connect them. So, for me to say, okay, we're working in the right direction, those businesses still can't wait for that money. So that's something that I don't know what went wrong. And, I'm not going to pick a fight with the government House Leader around fax machines or landlines. I won't be the one to do it. But I will say that there still is a communications breakdown, because if MPPs' offices, regardless of stripe, are unable to reach the ministry liaison folks or not able to connect with people to try and solve these problems, we're still having a communications breakdown. So I'm not saying to hook up the fax machines, but maybe the occasional phone could be plugged back in so that we could reach them. I don't know. But and I don't mean to mock it, but I do want to highlight that these businesses are still in limbo, and they don't have answers for the bill collectors. There's a business in my riding, Hair Candy. She is unfortunately still waiting for her first payment of $10,000, but she got a letter that says, thank you for submitting your application for the Ontario Small Business Support Grant. As you know, your application was approved under the business category, personal services, and you have received an OSBSG payment. No, she hasn't, Speaker. And this was to tell her that the province of Ontario is currently in the process of a post-payment audit of applications that have previously received OSBSG funding. So she was audited for money that they told her she got, but she has not, right? Which is not comical, but it's it's more than trying their patience there. Like none of it makes sense. And unfortunately, there are still businesses left behind. Here's a residential contractor that was never eligible for the OSBSG, and he had reached out to our office, and we've kept him in the loop with the work that our office has been doing. But he said, this program has upset me from the beginning. It seems to include every other business that offers services to people required to shut down, except small contractors, painters, tillers, etc. I noticed that the Ontario application website now specifically states it excludes those groups. I really don't understand why. My business has been shut down for the 3rd time. I'm a small residential contractor. I have leases on commercial vehicles, tools, and a space to store them. I do qualify for the CERB. It is $2,000 a month. My house mortgage is $1,500, so the cost of running my home is more than $2,000 a month. I also have 2 dependents in university, so clearly the CERB can't support my household. On top of that, I have the cost of my business leases, insurance, etc. I just keep running further into debt. I just don't understand why we are specifically excluded for the grant. You know, there are folks out there that don't see themselves reflected in any of the legislation we've brought forward or the initiatives.
Member for Oshawa has a question.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Speaker, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to pose a question to the Associate Minister of Red Tape and Small Business and Red Tape Reduction. Well, I guess it depends on the perspective. But, Speaker, to the Minister, we still have people writing to our office and across the province who are still waiting for their grants for the Ontario Small Business Support Grants. They applied in April, still waiting. We've had businesses who were approved to find out months later they're no longer eligible. Some got the money, some didn't. Sole proprietors that, because they didn't have a business account, were not eligible. There's no appeal process. Many small businesses who are believed they were wrongfully denied have no way to prove their eligibility. Small businesses call the support line, no answer. Some get a real person, but couldn't even pull up their file to verify their claim.
Pose your question, please.
So my question is, small businesses are still in flux. There's no 3rd round of this. It's been a mess. What would you have me say to those businesses in my community?
Thank you. Back to the Minister to respond.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. Speaker, our government recognized right away that small businesses impacted by public health measures required immediate support so they could continue serving their communities and employing, of course, all the people across Ontario. Our goal was to get the money to businesses quickly because we recognized that enormous economic shock that employers were affected. Businesses received, between those who were eligible, $20,000 to $40,000. Our government was very disappointed to see that the member opposite chose to vote against providing an additional $1.4 billion in support in this program for the 2nd round of payments. The opposition, instead of working with our government, they chose to play political games during the worst of the pandemic. But the people of Ontario know that our government stepped up to support businesses and families when they needed us most, and we allowed businesses to use that money as they saw fit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next question, the member from Oshawa.
Thank you, Speaker, and I'm glad to be able to ask a question as we're discussing the Supporting People in Business Act. The Ontario small businesses that we've been hearing from, and the member has acknowledged, and others have acknowledged, that it was a pretty rocky rollout, that many businesses, for some small businesses, they got their money right away, automatically got the 2nd round with no issues. That's great for them, but others have been chasing their first payment. They still haven't received it. There hasn't been a fair process. It's added unnecessary stress during a pandemic. They've been doing all the right things, locking down and all of this to keep our communities safe. We want the government to do right by them. We were hoping to see a 3rd round of the Ontario Small Business Support Grants. The member talked about how great it is for people to get phone calls. I don't know about this magical Disneyland where phone calls get returned by this government, but I don't live there. Our offices don't, our businesses don't. So I'd love to know about the support line, how that's going to be improved, and why on earth aren't we seeing a 3rd round when you know that that's what businesses have been asking for, direct support.
Back to the member from Mississauga Mills to respond.
Thank you very much for the question, and I would like to say that, yes, as I mentioned, like, yes, some businesses call us and emailed our office, and I am sure that all the members got some of those calls. But again, like, there is a way to check what's the status of their application. Sometimes they did something, or they didn't meet the criteria, that because it's not open for any business just to walk in and get money. There's requirements. You have to have a payroll, you have to have the previous year volume of sales and stuff like that. There is some requirements, documents required for them to be able to get the money. And I understand that some businesses could have some hurdles in there, but we are working on it. There is no hierarchy in there. Was there before the pandemic saying this is the hierarchy or the apparatus to give grants? But we are working on it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The next question, the member from Brampton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In order to continue to keep the province running, to support businesses and to keep Ontarians safe, our government has made numerous temporary regulatory changes throughout the pandemic. We have heard from stakeholders that some of these changes are helpful and should be made permanent. Examples of this include the sale of alcohol with food, delivery orders, and 24/7 delivery of goods to grocery stores and other businesses. Another change is, Mr. Speaker, in this legislation we are making extension of patios for restaurants. Does the member opposite support these changes that have made life easier for the people of Ontario, as well as support small businesses across the province?
Thank you. The member from Oshawa to respond.
Thank you. And the member highlights, a kind of a changing landscape in terms of how we eat in our communities. The amount of takeout or the chance to try different businesses with the delivery services or now patios. I mean, there are lots of things that we have had to shift and be a part of as they've happened, right? So we've learned from. And I'm very glad to be able to get up and answer about supporting small businesses. In fact, I hear from them all the time, those who were eligible initially and then no longer eligible for the Ontario Small Business Support Grant, or people who haven't been able to, have an appeal because there's no appeal process. We were sad to see, frankly, that there isn't that commitment to a third round for businesses, that some who are still waiting, Speaker, still waiting in our community since April, don't have an answer. Like, I asked my staff who is fielding these emails and phone calls, I said, what would you like me to ask the minister? I'm up, I have the chance. And she said, ask the minister what on earth I am supposed to say to these businesses who are still waiting.
Response.
So that's my response, is if we want to help small business, let's talk to them, let's ask them how we can help them, and then let's help them. That would be super. Thank you.
Thank you.